Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Choose to Challenge. I am LaWanna Bradford, and it's always a pleasure to come to you every week to talk about opportunities to challenge our mindsets, systems, institutions, things that are preventing us as women and perhaps men from elevating and expanding to the best and greatest version of ourselves. And today we have a very special guest who will be joining us, and that is none other than Jill Reynolds. And Jill is an international best-selling author. She's a teacher, she's a speaker, she's a woman of faith who has a passion to help connect one's lived experiences to where they are today. I'd like to call her a transformational coach, if you will, because it's really about spotlighting who we are and who we are intended to be when you look at the divine lens that we should apply and consider as we journey in this life of ours. One of the things that she focuses on is how do we become courageous and fearless? And today we are going to be talking about what it means to be a brave heart. We hear that term a lot, but in this conversation, we're going to kind of explore and unpackage that a little bit. And we're going to find out some of the exciting things that she has in store coming up in August. So stay tuned for that. And before I bring her on, I want to show you a little bit about what she's doing.
Time, God has commissioned women from around the world to mentor, encourage, teach and train tweens, teens, college students, and young women to be courageous and fearless women of God. In 2023, Queen Esther's need to rise up to save our nation and the generations to come. Receiving a crown of beauty for ashes, God has called older women to teach younger women that they are good enough and are wanted by a king who wants them to arise as resilient Queen Esthers and to live wisely, purely, and be good. Join us for 2 days at Yakov Theater in Branson, Missouri on Saturday, August 19th, 2023 and Sunday, August 20th, 2023 for Resilient Brave Hearts Women Conference. For such a time as this, come in a day early to see Esther at Sight and Sound Theater.
Hi, I'm Jill Reynolds with Resilient Brave Hearts. For such a time as this, coming to Branson, Missouri, August 19th to 20th, 2023. We will be meeting at Yakov's Theater, and I'm so excited for the event. No longer broken and becoming the best you will be joining us at this event. It's for all women of all ages, from 12 years old to 100. You don't want to miss this event. Come to Branson and be with us for this amazing weekend of hope, health, and healing.
Register now by going to braveheartworkshops.com.
Welcome, welcome. How's it going, Jill?
Well, thank you for having me on your show. And after watching that and knowing the name of your show, I'd love to just start off with saying I'd love to have everyone choose to challenge that event and what would stop you from wanting to get more hope, health, and healing in your life and to be more courageous and fearless. And LaWanna, we're at an age right now in this world and country where it's imperative that older women need to come alongside the younger women in Titus 2 so that those girls will live more wisely, purely, and to do good. So I guess because your show's called Choose to Challenge, that's the challenge I'm going to say to every woman out there. What are you doing? What are you doing to equip yourself to help and mentor others? alongside your journey to help them to grow in theirs.
I love that. And so, to our listening audience on E360 TV and beyond, I hope you pick up that challenge. And that is something for us to sit in, Jill, and ask ourselves, through our lived experience, through our learned journey, right? Overcoming, rising, and developing that resiliency and that courage. How are we passing those lessons along to make life a little bit easier and to give hope and inspiration? And in this time, there's a lot of noise, right? There's so many things we can lean into. There's a lot of messages that are bombarding us. But the one thing that I found, and I'd like to just get your thoughts on this, Jill, is people are hungry for hope. People are hungry to find those words of inspiration, right? We are bombarded with a lot of negativity, and we want those feel-good, inspirational things around us, because that's where the richness and joy in life lies. So I want to toss it to you and just get your whole take, and then to go back to talk about why is this conference so important at this point in time in our history?
Well, thank you on that. I guess the one thing I grew up in a family, just so you know, that was very dysfunctional, and no one taught me anything. I had to learn everything on my own. I really did. I don't remember ever bringing home a book, and really after my parents' divorce, having anyone read to me. And so I had to really learn everything on my own. I have a lot of street knowledge. And so what I've done over the years is, when I'm not sure of something, I like to look something up to see a definition. And so the definition most people hear of the word hope is, do you hope for a promotion? Do you hope for good health? Do you hope to get married? Do you hope to be financially secure? And why I believe those things are great things to have hope in, what I've come to find out, if we first don't have hope in a relationship with what I feel is God, for me, mine is God, and we don't have that spiritual connection of something outside of ourselves to connect with Him, then all the other things seem kind of hopeless. And so I've drawn into my challenges, where is your hope today? What are you hoping for? Are you hoping for material things, or things that are not of God to direct you on? And if you are, maybe if you choose to have a new direction, you'll find more peace and serenity and find a true hope.
I have a question for you, because we have audiences of different faiths, backgrounds, and experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we're facing what's known as the second pandemic, which is the mental health of our entire communities around the world. And what would you say to that woman who is really struggling with finding that mental peace, that mental well-being, that stability, and find her anchor of hope, so that she can rise in fighting and conquering the day and tomorrow?
Well, thank you for asking that, because again, you said I do transformational coaching. And so my company, Braveheart Workshops, actually started, LaWanna, when my life was feeling a little bit hopeless after a car accident. I had to go to treatment 5 times for an eating disorder. And I ended up having one of my therapists is now a world-renowned drama therapist. So she's actually the one who gets to speak like as the keynote at the mental health conferences. So I've come to learn a lot about mental health through my own recovery and healing. And I find this fascinating. I'll take you on a journey, because I think you'll love this journey. Think about that baby in a womb when a mother conceives. And from the moment of conception, you're either wanted or you're not. It's either, when your mother finds out she's pregnant, she's either like, oh, I'm so excited I'm having a baby, or she's like, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. I don't want this child. So from the moment of conception inside the womb, all of a sudden you pick up, I am a wanted child or I'm not a wanted. But then you take it even a step further, LaWanna, and you go into the moment the baby is delivered through the birth canal. And if it's pulled out vaginally or even C-section, the moment it is to take a breath of life, you must cut the umbilical cord, because if you don't, that baby can't live outside of the mother's womb. It will die. So the moment that umbilical cord is cut, does the baby take on that burden of feeling abandoned or scared or fear? And then it gets spanked by the doctor and it starts screaming and it feels pain and angry. So I say this to you because we go through our whole life trying to get rid of emotional burdens. But what if those burdens were brought into conception for a purpose of survival? And instead of looking at them as horrible, negative things that we constantly want to get rid of, what would it be like if we took some time to close our eyes and connect with that burden and find out what story it has? So I'm all about connecting the dots of story, the good, the bad, and the ugly, LaWanna, so that when you do connect the dots, you'll start to find story and patterns in your life to bring about mental wellness and healing. And so we go for years and years and years trying to get rid of all these. And instead, I've come to a place where I might sit with a thought, maybe I'm going through disdain or busyness, and I might sit and close my eyes and say, busyness. I see you're showing up in my life a lot lately. I want to know why you're here. And would you mind if I slow down enough for you to tell me why you're needed in my life right now? And when you do that, busyness might say, well, that's because you're so lonely and you don't want to feel the loneliness. So you're being really busy right now so you can feel like, that someone cares about you. So when you give it a voice and you speak to it, what I've come to do after I spend time doing what I call burden release work, and then I unblend with it. And in my mind's eyes, LaWanna, I love the beach. So I pretend like I have my own private beach, and I line up beautiful, comfortable lawn chairs with a nice table with a pitcher of ice water and a favorite book and some suntan lotion and a sun umbrella and sand pails. And I might ask, busyness, you've been working so hard. Would you like to take a break and go to the beach? So it's called unblending. And you ask it to go there. And then you can bring in a blessing inside of you of maybe the blessing you need instead of busyness is connection. And so it's just a wonderful healing way and transformational way to find hope, health, and healing by connecting the dots of story.
I love how you painted that picture. And so it's unblending, but celebrating the journey, having that conversation with whatever that experience is, and then inviting it to a place of change, right?
A place of change. But also then I need to say, but when you need to have it back in your life, you will go back to the beach and say, busyness, I need some help today. Would you come in and help me for like an hour? So you might invite busyness back in to help you for so whatever reason. See, I believe these parts come in. All parts are good when you look at them in loving connection. They don't have to be negative, and they don't have to be debilitating to cause us additional mental disdain in our life. They don't have to be. And so, think about this for just a moment. If someone is off the chart in feeling extreme anxiety or depression, where suicide ideation comes into play, if you can sit with the anxiety and say, why are you here right now that I'm feeling so much anxiety, and ask it to unblend, that may be the piece of your life that saves you from committing suicide or something more, something drastic, or going out and drinking, or, picking someone up at a bar. So there's ways that you can work through your mental illness and in anxiety without it being destructive in your life.
I love the tool that you just gave, and like with our physical health, we have to learn, right, and understand what tools are out there and how can we apply them to our lives. To those that are watching, this is not designed to treat or identify any illness, but it's here to share life experiences as being told by Jill, and also sharing with you some of her solutions that have worked. So we encourage you that if you're in a place of anxiety or fear, and you need to reach out, we encourage you to reach out to friends, family, even those in the professional realm, so that you can get the support that you need to help you journey through. Because I don't believe that this life is meant for us to journey alone, right? It's community. Sometimes we need community. Well, I think all the time community is important, but especially in those very dark hours. Yes.
Well, I find that interesting because one of my favorite sayings is, even Jesus needed 12 disciples. Think about that for just a moment. And he was, had all power and might, but he still needed connection. And, I'd like to take us on a journey which will answer your question is, what does it mean to be bravehearted? And why did I get this challenge? I love that word, why did I receive a challenge to do this event in Branson, Missouri? How did this come about? And so I'll take you on my own little personal journey if I can. So talking about connecting the dots of story, like I mentioned earlier, I lived in a very sadly dysfunctional home. My mother had borderline personality. She started cheating on my father when I was about 3 or 4 years old. And one day when my dad was away at work, and my father was my lifeline. My mother was very mean to me, very much. She told me every day of my life that I was double ugly and there was nothing good about me. And so I had that burden. But my dad was my lifeline, who would come home and give me hugs and tuck me into bed and pray with me. And he would read me bedtime stories. And so one day when he was at work, my mother packed our belongings and moved us from our home to an apartment right by a train track, by the metro train station, so she could be close to a married man she was having an affair with. And so I was 5 years old, and I'd cry myself to sleep at night, missing my dad so badly. And I'd hear a train go by, and I hated the sound of the train because it reminded me of feeling abandoned. Well, fast forward with the story. The man she was having the affair with died suddenly of a heart attack. We moved back to our family home away from the train, but I'd only see my dad on Sundays. And so I had that burden in me that I still felt abandoned. And so it stayed with me from 5.5 years, fast forward all the way into my 50s. And I got to a place where I was going through a lot of codependency and had to go into treatment back in the 90s, 1992, for codependence treatment. And it was at a little Baptist hospital in Miami, Oklahoma. And we'd go downstairs to the cafeteria to eat our meals, which was next to a prayer chapel. And every day I would go to the prayer chapel and I would do my prayer and meditation. By this time, LaWanna and everyone, I was 10 years recovered from crack cocaine addiction and alcoholism. And I had started going to AA meetings. But when I got to step 3 of AA, which is made a decision to turn my life and my will over to the care of God, I had invited Jesus into my life. But being from a dysfunctional family, I was still really controlling. I wanted to control my own life. And so turning my life and my will over to God was really hard for me. I wanted my own power and control. So as I sat in that little prayer chapel, all of a sudden in the background, I hear a train go by. And I get really angry and I put my fist up and I say, I hate that train whistle. It reminds me of my dad abandoning me when I was little, and I hate trains. And at that moment, right in the middle of the chapel, I could almost audibly hear God say, Jill, your father never abandoned you. Your mother abandoned him. He loved you dearly. He was there as often as he could. And by the way, I've never abandoned you either. I've always been here. So right in the middle of that little chapel, LaWanna, I put my hands up and said, okay, I'm turning my life and my will over to you today. I'm surrendering. So that was my first train whistle. And so remember I said, when you find burdens, you take them and connect the dots for abandonment. So as I connected these dots in my life, what happened next was pretty profound. Years later, my mother got sick and had to move in with me she had peritoneal cancer, and I cared for her till she died. And after she passed away, because it was still a lot of abuse, even though I was lovingly caretaking her, and I put on a lot of weight while I took care of her, I checked myself in to a treatment center a month after she died in Wickenburg, Arizona, in the middle of a desert, surrounded by coyotes and snakes and nothing else. And so I'm in the middle of doing my trauma therapy at the treatment center, and I hear a train whistle go by. Now, there's nothing there. Where is this train coming from? And right in the middle of it, God said, I told you, Jill, I'd be here in the midst of your trauma and your pain. I've never abandoned you. And I was like, wow. Well, that was in 2007. Fast forward the story to 2012. I was at O'Hare Airport, and I had gotten in a car accident. I was leaning into my vehicle, standing outside my car, into the vehicle, parked curbside, and a lady hit my car door, and I flew. And I had to have 2 new knees and a new hip, and it permanently damaged my spine. Until this day, I can only stand about 10 minutes and walk about 2 blocks. And so after that trauma, I went back into treatment in St. Louis at a place that was on about 500 acres in a beautiful forest, nothing around but deer. And I'm in the middle of doing my trauma therapy, and a train goes by. I'm like, where is a train? And God said, I told you I'd never leave you or abandon you. Well, when I got out of treatment, I sought out a new therapist. I pulled up to her office, and her office was next to a metro train station. Now, I didn't know this when I booked it. And every time I would do my sessions, a train would go by. Well, about a year later, I sought a new therapist who lived in a residential area. And I drove to her house. A block before I got to her house, I crossed a train track. And every time I did a session, a train went by. Well, about 5.5 years ago, my husband and I sought places to retire. And we went to like Nashville and Cape Girardeau. And then we decided, well, let's check out Branson. Well, I couldn't find the exact house I wanted. So I reached out to 3 builders and a realtor who took me to about 5 different lots. And as we walked onto the lot with the realtor one day, as soon as I stepped foot on this property, which, by the way, you'll see in a minute, the minute I step foot, a train goes by, and there's like no trains around. And then the next day, and it was a whole different time, we went with the builder to those 5 lots, and that same lot from the day before, the minute I stepped foot, a train went by. I looked at my husband, I says, we are building our house here. So this is the subdivision I live in right here that you're seeing. This is where I live. It's got 600 single family homes, villas, condos, lodges. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's a gated community, but there's a train in the back of the property that goes by throughout the day. And I never know when it's going to go by. So 3 months ago, I had this pain inside of my heart with all the things going on at schools today, with children being more and more lost. And I went to bed that night, LaWanna, and I cried out to God. I says, God, I am so sad for what's happening in our world with kids today. My heart is breaking. And I tried to fall asleep, and right then the biggest train whistle went by. And God said to me, Jill, I gave you the abilities to be a certified meeting and event planner, which my certification, I used to be a director of sales at hotels in Chicago. He said, I want you to put together a girls and women's conference called Resilient Bravehearts. He told me the name. For such a time as this, like Queen Esther in the play Queen Esther, she was chosen to save the Jewish nation for such a time as this. And he said, I want it to be a Resilient Bravehearts Girls and Women's Conference for such a time as this, so that it will create hope, health, and healing in their lives in the world. And I looked, it was like 2 a.m, okay, LaWanna, and I went, how in the world am I at 69 going to put on a major conference with no money and just me? He said, you're going to ask for help. And I'm like, I'm going to ask for help to raise $21,000 in 3 months and put on a major conference in Branson without knowing where. Yep, you're going to do this. I was like, okay, I don't want to, because LaWanna, in the summertime, I long to go to the swimming pools for an hour to an hour and a half and do water aerobics, because I get no exercise all year round because of my disability. And so I was longing for May 31st for the pools to open so I could go to the pool every day. And I'm like, you want me to work 15 hours a day in the summer and not swim? He goes, well, I guess you can swim another year. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so thus the journey began. And so I went around to different theaters, and all the theaters are booked during the summer because they're doing shows. Well, I walked into Yakov's theater. Yakov is a Russian Christian comedian here in town. Everybody loves Yakov. He's been on all kinds of comedy shows. And I walked in and he says, well, me and my wife will be on vacation the weekend of this, this, and this. And it turned out the weekend of August 19th and 20th is the weekend, LaWanna, right before school starts. And I'm like, that's perfect, because the kids will be back coming, they'll be not on vacation with their parents. So they'll be able to say, hey, let's go to this last event before school starts. And then they'll be ready to walk into the schools empowered with courage and be fearless before school starts. So Yakov said we could do the theater for like a really good price for 2 days. Then the Holiday Inn Express calls me up and says, I see you have an event. Would you like a room block? We'll give you rooms for $104 a night for a room with 2 queen beds. It's normally $160 to $180 a night. I was like, wow, sure. I mean, it's just amazing how things have been working. So everything is manifesting. The only thing we still need, believe it or not, is you, the audience, to come to the event. That's what we're waiting for, is you to say, yes. And it's amazing how things have been just manifesting for this, LaWanna.
I love that. We're going to do a cutaway for our sponsor, and we'll be right back.
That sponsor goes great with the program. I love them.
I know. I was like, well, again, perfect timing, right? And I love the story of this journey that you've told us. And for those that are listening, sometimes we receive that inspiration and we're wondering how we're going to get it done. And an individual by the name of Birch Smith Lyon, she always says, trust and allow and don't ask how. And when we trust, right? And for you, for me, Jill, we believe in God, but whatever your anchor is, your place of hope, when you believe and you let go of the worry and the anxiety that can come with the doing, it's amazing how all the pieces line up. And like you said, the last piece is the audience. Well, that's going to come because now you have the place. You have the resources that your audience needs once they fly in or come from the local area. So this is pretty amazing and exciting. One of the things I'd like you to talk about, if you could just give a little snapshot, because I know that the play Esther will precede the conference, and some people, they don't know anything about Esther. And within different communities, especially communities of color, it's a very endearing term to refer to women, to each other as queens. Well, that is not just your divine royalty, but it's in respect that you give yourself that place of seat of honor, but also looking at another person and saying, I love you, I respect you, and I allow you to be. Tell us a little bit about who is Esther and why is she so important in this journey of Resilient Braveheart Conference?
Well, thank you for asking that. Before Queen Esther even came to Branson, I had heard of her, but I really had never did a deep dive in the Bible to read who she really was. And so Esther was a Jewish woman whose parents died when she was young, and her cousin Mordecai raised her. And they lived, and if I get very wrong, they lived in the town they lived in, and King Xerxes was the king, and Queen Vashti was his queen. And in those days, of course, when the king would want his queen, he would summons her into his chambers. So he had summoned Queen Vashti, and I found this fascinating. She refused to go. She was maybe having a bad day, I don't know, but she didn't want to go. And so as a result of this, his King Xerxes's leaders below him said, this is horrible. We can't let the country know that the queen did not obey you. That will have a bad image for you. So you must get rid of her and find a new queen. So he cast out Queen Vashti and he sought for a new queen. So they went around the town and they made all these women come to live at the castle for a year. And they all had eunuchs who were assigned to them to beautify them with oils and baths and all kinds of things. And it took a whole year. I find that fascinating, LaWanna. It took a whole year to beautify these women before they presented these women to the king. So when they did, they presented their women. None of them knew that Esther, which she had a different name, and I can't think of her name before she was called a queen. They did not know she was Jewish, and they wanted a Gentile woman. They did not want a Jewish woman. So she had to hide, and Mordecai said, don't let anyone know you're Jewish. So the king found favor and selected Queen Esther, and she became the queen, not knowing she was Jewish. Well, one of the leaders did not like the fact that about Mordecai. He, for some reason, didn't like, and he decided he wanted to have all of the Jewish people killed. And Mordecai had heard about this, and somehow he got a message back to the castle to let Queen Esther know that King Xerxes wanted them dead. So she knew if she went to the chambers uncalled for, that was not acceptable and she'd be cast out and maybe even killed. So she prayed and fasted for 2 days, asking God to give her courage and to take her fear away, to do something that could possibly end her life. And so she came up with a plan from God. And on the second day of fasting, she went to the chambers and said to the king, she says, if you find favor, King Xerxes, could I throw you a banquet tonight? Well, instead of being angry, he was quite honored that she would want to throw him a banquet. He said, yes. So he invited King Xerxes' assistant Hamas to the banquet. And Hamas was so excited he got invited. Well, they got drunk, so she never got to ask him to save the Jewish people. So she said at the end of the night, can we do it again tomorrow, which they did. And so at this point, she finally got a place to be able to tell the king in front of Hamas that it was Hamas who was evil and not Mordecai. And so King Xerxes found favor and he killed Hamas, and then Queen Esther saved the Jewish people and she's known for that she was chosen by God for such a time as this to save the Jewish people and to be courageous and fearless. And so the challenge I'd say to all women, haven't you been chosen for such a time as this in your life to do something in this world? We each have purpose, and are we living that purpose?
Yes, I love that. And like you said, not only did she say it was for such a time as this, but she boldly said, if I perish, I perish. And that really speaks to her passion and her knowing her calling, right? Mm-hmm. Her knowing her purpose and being willing to walk in it. And I challenge all of you, whether it's in your family, your local communities, or even if it's a broader global outreach, What were you called to do? What were you called to come against? What were you called to challenge? And are you willing to say, for such a time as this, I'm here, and if I perish, I perish? Because sometimes we have to get out of our own way. The privileges, the opportunities that we have in the U.S., Jill, it's frightening to see that so many emerging countries are fighting for what we're taking for granted. But even here in the U.S., things that we thought would be forever and ever are being challenged. No matter what your perspective is, the fact is you have to rise in your voice. You have to rise in your truth. Mm-hmm. And that's what I hear you saying, what Esther did. She was willing to say, I'm here. I'm willing to take this risk, because it was a risk. Mm-hmm. And if I perish, I perish.
Yeah, and if any of you have never been to the Sight and Sound Theater here in Branson or Lancaster, Pennsylvania, I'm from Chicago originally. And so I used to go to theater all the time and see all different plays, from Cats to Les Mis to Oklahoma to Chorus Line, all of the amazing Hamilton plays that have been out there. And when I moved to Branson and went to my first production at the Sight and Sound Theater, I was blown away. They have the best theatrical presentation of any playhouse in New York, Chicago, or LA. Their productions come to life. And Esther, I mean, you can't miss Esther. There are people are coming in by the busloads right now, LaWanna, church group, youth groups to see Esther. So come to Branson. August 18th is a Friday. And on Friday, Sight and Sound has a 3:30 and a 7:30 show for $68 to see Esther. And the conference here in Branson is the 19th and 20th. So go get filled up with courage and fearless and fire from Esther on Friday. Then come to our event, and it's only for, if you have a financial need only, it's $15 to cover your lunch. If you could afford it, general admission tickets are only $28. But if you're coming with two, your second ticket is half off. So 2 tickets for $42, which includes your lunches. And then the Holiday Inn Express has limited rooms left. So you want to book right away for $104. So it's a very affordable getaway. And if you live, these are some of the cities, just to name off, if you live in these cities that you can get to. So you can get.
Let me just ask you one, because I think I may have had a typo. The conference, is it the 19th and the 20th?
Yes, August 19th and August 20th is the conference. Okay. Yes, August 19th and 20th is the conference. And we just added, which let's tell them who the speakers are, if we could.
Sure, we'll do that. Right.
Thank you.
Here we go.
Join us at the Resilient Bravehearts Girls and Women's Conference for such a time as this. August 19th and 20th, 2023 at Yakov's Theater in Branson, Missouri. Presenting our featured speakers, who include Jill Reynolds, Dee Forbes, Brenda Ringwood, singer-songwriter Tammy Trent, our featured speaker, Sarah Forhetz, Louis Michael, Julie Hedenberg, Mary Starr, Brenda McClintock, Sue Detweiler, Dr. Marina Hoffman, Cynthia Thomas, Dr. Brittany Wright, Carolyn Boss, and Mandy Farrow. Join us by registering today at braveheartworkshops.com. Get your tickets now. So of those speakers, just so you know, Tammy Trent is from Nashville, Tennessee, and she's produced 7 albums. She's toured with Women of Faith, Sheila Walsh, Beth Moore, amazing woman of God. And she has unbelievable testimony of her husband dying on 9/11 when he went to do a free dive, scuba diving. And she's just got an amazing testimony of hope, health, and healing. And Sarah Forhetz, who's our keynote, is a former anchor woman here in the Missouri area, and her husband was her co-anchor, and they went on to be directors at the Convoy of Hope, doing ministry work around the world. So fabulous speakers. And Louis Michael, we just added him because he tried to commit suicide and God saved him. And he's got a ministry now called Choosing to Live, that we have a purpose in our life and there's all options to suicide. So we've got so many great topics that'll touch everyone's life. And my good friend that you saw, Dee Forbes, she's a pastor from North Carolina. She's got a ministry called No Longer Broken. She's a recovered crack cocaine addict. And Brenda Ringwood has a ministry called Becoming the Best You Can Be. She was charged with a felony when her partner did illegal banking applications. And she, because she owned the company, went to prison. So she's got a ministry called Becoming the Best You and From Felon to Freedom. And so when you put the whole sentence together, it's prophetic. It comes out to be resilient brave hearts who are no longer broken and are becoming the best you can be for such a time as this. Why? To inspire hope, health, and healing in the world. And you're invited to be a part of this.
I love it. I love it. We are out of time, but before we go, I want to play the first video once again so people can get a feel of what this experience will be all about. Okay.
At the beginning of time, God has commissioned women from around the world to mentor, encourage, teach, and train tweens, teens, college students, and young women to be courageous and fearless women of God. In 2023, Queen Esther's need to rise up to save our nation and the generations to come. Receiving a crown of beauty for ashes, God has called older women to teach younger women that they are good enough and are wanted by a king who wants them to arise as resilient Queen Esthers and to live wisely, purely, and be good. Join us for 2 days at Yakov Theater in Branson, Missouri on Saturday, August 19th, 2023 and Sunday, August 20th, 2023 for Resilient Brave Hearts Women Conference. For such a time as this, come in a day early to see Esther at Sight and Sound Theater.
Hi, I'm Jill Reynolds with Resilient Brave Heart for such a time as this, coming to Branson, Missouri, August 19th to 20th, 2023. We will be meeting at Yakov's Theater, and I'm so excited for the event. No Longer Broken and Becoming the Best You will be joining us at this event. It's for all women of all ages, from 12 years old to 100. You don't want to miss this event. Come to Branson and be with us for this amazing weekend of hope, health, and healing.
Register now by going to braveheartworkshops.com.
I love it. This has been an amazing time with you, Jill. Thank you so very much for joining us on Choose to Challenge. And we encourage you to reach out and connect with Jill on all things social media. Follow her. And if you can, be a part of this amazing conference. I'm going to put the information here once again. The Resilient Brave Hearts Girls and Women's Conference, August 19th through 20th. And you can register at braveheartworkshops.com/resilient-brave-hearts-girls-women's-conference.
And to make it easier, my website is just braveheartworkshops.com. And then you'll see the register button to take you to that link that you put in. So just braveheartworkshops.com is the easiest way. Make sure you put an S on the end of workshops. Brave. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really, really am honored.
You're welcome. Thank you so very much. So again, braveheartworkshops.com. You don't have to worry about that long URL that I gave you earlier.
That's
So
okay.
this is going to be great. And again, on her website, that's also the way that you can contact Jill directly and follow everything that she's doing and just be a part of her community and support in any way that you can. Because again, we're looking at from generation to generation, the former reaching out to the young so that we can build a better future for ourselves, for our young women, and for the next generation.
Thank you.
And to those of you who have been following us, continue to follow us on Choose to Challenge on E360 TV. And just remember that in life, there are going to be those times that you're called to challenge a situation that may make you feel a little uncomfortable. You may be the lone ranger out there, but it's for such a time as this that you were called. So again, choose to challenge. Know that all that you need, all the resources, all the support that you need will be there as you go through your journey to challenge issues in the world in order to make it a better place for you, your family, the community, and the world. And just remember that in life and in business, when your vision intersects with opportunity, success is inevitable. Until next time, we'll see you on another edition of Choose to Challenge. Thank you so much, Jill.
Thank you.